24 permanent crew, and they were the McNultys who are still here in Howth. And Judge Boyd suddenly brought this enormous thing into Howth. I mean, with their bowsprit and everything sticking out, it was quite a proposition. But anyway, so Herbert responded. In 1893, he built the Ethnic, which actually to most people looks slightly like a miniature of the Thalia. But she was a gorgeous little boat. And this is the most impressive photograph, because Herbert designed and built her in the boat shed at Howth House. He was extremely good as a little shipwright. And this is a photograph of a boat a man designed himself and built himself, taken by a camera he built himself. And that's quite a performance. Anyway, we move on, and meanwhile there were lots of boy racers and sailing around Howth as well at the time, but because the fishing harbour had a bit of revival in the early 1890s, the local nearest thing to a sailing club was the Sutton Golf and Sailing Club at Couch Point, what is now Sutton Golf Club. And they had 3 or 4 of these half-raters, which, as you can see, were so ahead of their time, it's unbelievable. I mean, these were boats designed and built in around between 1892 and 1895. They were death traps, but they were full of all sorts of ingenious ideas. They'd roll a furled jibs, they'd fully batten mains, and they'd, well, you see the cute trick, when you go onto the run, turns out the jib is on a permanent pole. I mean, we're still not making boats as clever as this. And anyway, that's what they looked like underwater. Now, unfortunately, they weren't completely into hydrodynamics, and they had a flat plate for a keel, which must have created dreadful turbulence. But anything that's as different from what we imagine the traditional yacht of the late Victorian era is difficult to imagine. But anyway, Herbert Boyd decided he had to have a go at designing one of these, and this is the one he produced, called the Avis. And this is where I get into a right rod. There she goes. Slow it down a wee minute here. We're going to discuss this. Peter Cullen says, please don't mention it. I don't know anything about this. But Clive Cullen used to have a little cruiser, a sort of duck-egg blue boat called Venture. And I think the Venture was this hull with another 2 or 3 planks added on top. She was about 26 feet long. And she ended up between the club and the lifeboat house in sort of the graveyard of boats that was there for a while. And I went aboard her, and you could find there was a different hull in the lower half, beautifully built. As you can see, the Avis, as she was called, could go like a rocket. But the half-raters kept drowning people, which isn't very good for the future of the class. And you run out of helmsmen. But anyway, so we try the next one, I can't remember. This is the final glimpse of the half-raters at Howth. This gives you an idea how sensational they were in their day. There's some typical Howth yachts in the background. This is about 1894, 95, and the 3 half-raters, Dr. Stacks on the left, the Smallridge family's oaring in the right, the Avis in the foreground. They were like flying 15s way before Russell Fox thought of flying 15s. But anyway, they started to get serious in Howth, because the judge was still tearing around in the Thalia. And this is taken on the Clyde, when he went back up to the Clyde with her in 1894. And the family used to sail with him. In fact, they crewed for him, including his daughters, when they were 2, I think. So if only we can get a clearer version of this photo. You can see that's the Boyd family aft. I should well believe it's the judge himself at the helm, but he was an ace on the helm. And they'd learned how to make the Thalia go. And so she was good news, but you might well wonder, how on earth could one keep a boat like this in a little place like Howth? So here's how he did it. He just treated Howth as if it was a private harbour. If you look there, just in this side of the old Coast Guard station, which was knocked down in order to remove what was seen as relic of British imperialism, subsequent to which we've still since built another Coast Guard station. Now, the old Coast Guard station had a wonderful tower with an excellent sea view. The new Coast Guard station, I'm not sure you can see the sea at all. But apart from these advances in civic administration, meanwhile, Judge Boyd, as I say, treated Howth Harbour as his private marina, and he kept the Thalaya in the very best berth alongside the net drying shed, and probably told everybody she doesn't get in the way at all, you know. I mean, anyway, this is getting around. It's about 1899, I think, judging by the presence of the Dublin Bay No. 1s, and the Thalaya sitting there in all her glory, and there's that. She was quite a handsome boat, I must say. She really was. She was a looker, and after a while the judge even got absent-minded about retracting the bowsprit. You can imagine coming in on a stormy night. You can imagine coming in on a stormy night with an old buckety fishing boat and finding you have to go round the end of that damn thing. Anyway, never mind. Perhaps as a reaction to the judge's slightly extravagant behaviour, his sons and a bunch of their friends in 1895 finally got around to forming Howth Sailing Club. And there they are. The list. It does really show quite significant influence by the Scottish community in Dublin, which was quite large at the time. In fact, it looks like a guest list for Burns night. But, there's one Fitzgibbon, that's about the height of it. The rest of them are Boyds, and there's a Foley, so that's not so bad, and a Stack. But they formed before the membership. You see top left there, WH Boyd, Cecil Boyd, Henry Boyd, and Robert Boyd. That's the four sons of the judge. The judge himself, so far as I know, never quite got around to joining the club. And bottom left is Noel Guinness, and Johnny Studdert, who was a great pillar of sailing, and Benny Newcomb. Now, the one that really interests me is middle of the right-hand row, T.W. Miles. Whether that is the famous Thomas Miles of the Chota, I don't know. I've no reference anywhere in anything I've found out about him that he ever lived in Howth. It's a rare enough surname. And he's the man who built the College of Surgeons for sailing community galas once a year now. But anyway, they got the club formed, and they started thinking about getting a serious, proper little one design, a seaworthy one design. And, oh yes, of course, now that he was Commodore of Howth Sailing Club, Herbert Boyd was finally flying the swallowtail Burgee from the Ethne. She really is a gorgeous little boat, and we wish Sean Cullen very well with the restoration project. But we see a bit more of that shortly. They also had a class of the water wags, which, as you see, they look broadly similar to the Primula, but they're much slimmer. And it's interesting, the racing trim. The fellow in number 3 doing rather well, absolutely deserves to be doing well. He has the trim just right, whereas the one behind, number 8, that's Benny Newcomb, whom I told was a bit of a pompous old fart. And he's sitting up there at the tiller at the back of the boat, doing nothing whatever for the windward ability. I mean, it really, unless you're in acute discomfort in a water wag, you're not sailing her properly. But this is a symbolic little series of photos, because this is the year 1895 when yachts were officially allowed into Howth Harbour. It had been unofficial before then, because it was supposed to be a fishing station, but the fishing had just gone completely by this stage. And there's a couple of the wags from Sutton Sailing and Golf Club. They've abandoned any pretensions to having a sailing centre at Cush Point, although Sutton Golf Club still has a Burgee. Not a lot of people know that. But anyway, Meanwhile, the members of Howth Sailing Club were thinking it really was time they got themselves a proper little one-design keel boat. And Herbert Boyd had branched out. He had designed the Marguerite, to be built by Jack Wellington in Malahide in 1896. And this is a recent photo of the Marguerite under the command of Tim McGuinness, former president of the Double Bay Old Gaffers Association. And looking very well indeed. I must say Boyd could design a decent boat. But as members of Howth Sailing Club, they were casting around a bit. They wanted something that was able and so forth. And so they were looking at their own bizarre fleet. This is the regatta of 1896 or 97. And both the Marguerite and the Ethne are both in that fleet. Nice running start, that. Nothing like that for a bit of stroke. But anyway, where would they get their inspiration? Where would they sort of look? And as it happens in 1897, let's see the next one. Now, this is pure coincidence. This is the Glasgow Herald on Monday, July the 12th. I'm showing it to show the date. I wanted to turn about the fire in the city of Rome on July the 12th for, I don't know, but it turns out the city of Rome is a ship. But anyway, within this edition of the Glasgow Herald is the full report of Clyde Fortnight. And it turns out the Thalia was at Clyde Fortnight. And if you can read these, about 6 from the top is the Thalia, the Honorary Judge Boyd. This is a boat was supposed to be a dub back in 1891. And this is 1897. 6 starts, 4 firsts, 1 second, and prize money. She's the 3rd highest prize winner at Clyde Fortnight, 1897. She's won £140, which somebody tells me is now worth about 140,000. I can't believe that. What's 100 times £140?
A lot.
A lot. Anyway, but we've all gone to Owen Bissett and the rest of them. But anyway, another thing the guys, the Boyds sailing with their father in Clyde Fortnight would have seen was the first appearance of the Belfast Lock 1 designs, the new 25-foot waterline class, designed by Fife and built by Hilditch of Carrickfergus, who was a great man for building the 1 design boats. He stuck to the plans. Most other builders always tried to improve on the plans or cut corners. Hilditch just did as he was told. And these were designed by Fife. They are absolutely gorgeous boats. And this is them making their debut. There's only 4 weeks after their first race in Belfast Lock on May the 29th, 1897. They've sailed across to the Clyde and they're all racing there together. And as you can see, they're trackers. And there's another nice, and they also were, I love this picture. This is a typical classic Clyde Fortnight squall has just struck. The Merle on the right has managed to get his topsail down, and judging by the way the ropes are down in a bit of a hurry. The Felty on the left hasn't got his topsail down and he's hanging in. But the thing that really is to concentrate on the crew in the boat, because the Merle is trying to throw a jibe. And she was owned by a fellow called Bryce Smith, who weighed in at 18 stone on a good day. And if you imagine, the way they worked it apparently was the guy on the main sheet was down below in the cabin, where at least he was safe. But it was his job to haul like hell. And then as the rather stout party on the helm got her through the jibe to let this main sheet away like the clappers. They were built, interestingly enough, you can see it in this now, they were built with what was called a swept pine deck. And the Belfast men were too mean to have a full-length teak king plank. So as you see, there's just a little bit of toy teak king plank in the way of the rudder head, but the rest of it is just ordinary pine. But anyway, the Merle managed their jive, and they came back again and got really seriously talking. They said, if this is what Hilditch can do, building one designs, we must get Hilditch design, and we must get Herbert Boyd to do the drawings. And by October the 22nd, 1897, they'd held the meetings, they'd agreed the design for the whole 17, and he produced an absolutely gorgeous looking little boat. I think the sections particularly, if you look at the sections in the hull, they're just fabulous. They're just right. She's neither too deep nor too shallow. And she also has a very forgiving shape, as has been found out over many years, that you don't hit a rock, you sort of slide up a rock. Which, the only thing you can say about the whole 17 is she doesn't really have a rudder. She's a trim tab. I mean, the rudder is way undersized. I am one of many helmsmen on a whole 17 who's been absolutely convinced the rudder has fallen off. So they're great training, because you don't steer a whole 17, you sail her. If you haven't got the sails trimmed right, she will not go. And I actually might as well say I'd love to take one of the rudders and fill in the gap between the trailing edge and the underside of the counter. That would really make the rad on it. And they might have fewer collisions than they seem to have with appalling regularity these days. It sure keeps the shipwrights busy. Anyway, October 22nd, 1897, they signed off the plans, and the order was confirmed with Hilditch to build the first 5, and Hilditch's yard was in Carrickfergus, where you know the castle well. But if you, in 1897, if you went up to the top of the castle and looked down, you would see, well, the main thing you'd see is the Anchor Inn, which is now gone, but my goodness, it would just be a great place in Regatta Day in Carrickfergus. But those sheds are Hilditch's yard. That's where the whole 17s were built 118 years ago. And the 5 of them, having signed off on October 22nd, the 5 of them were ready at the beginning of April. If you try to do that now, you'd still have focus groups discussing what shape, size, colour, or whatever the boat should be. They could do things in those days. They didn't. So anyway, the owners just said, right, well, we'll sail them down. They're supposed to be little performance boats. So up they went, and before the end of April, they were in Howth, the 5 of them. And they had no sail numbers, because everybody knew everybody else. So I have to confess I've forgotten which boats these are, but they are both 17s. They're either the Rita, the Ore, or the Hera, or the Silver Moon, or the Leela. Anyway, there's only been one change made. The first 5 had cast iron keels, but after Zeta was built in 1900, and she'd a lead keel, which obviously made her a much better performer. They all changed to lead, but apart from that they haven't changed at all. Yeah. Well, they have in one respect as well. I mean, I mustn't be saying things against the people from Kingstown. But in 1907, Dublin Bay Sailing Club decided they'd had enough of being capsized into Dublin Bay from the centreboard colleens. They needed a proper boat. So after searching everywhere, they finally accepted the only decent boat was the Howth 17, which they promptly adopted. Within a year, everybody knew it was the Dublin Bay 17. Anyway, Howth was forgotten. But the one change that the Kingstown people needed was a bigger cockpit, because they're much better fed, so I think they needed. And I may as well tell you that it's a great relief to the current owners of the whole 17s that this was allowed, because all the boats now, when they get a major refit, they reappear with a bigger cockpit. Anyway, my goodness, you didn't have dress to go yachting in those days. That's Noel Guinness. The St. Bruno going like mad. I don't know whether those are the clothes they